Welcome to Adulting on the Spectrum. I'm Andrew, an autistic certified financial planner. I co-run Adulting on the Spectrum with Eileen Lamb. Hey, Eileen.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, everyone. In this podcast, we want to highlight real voices of autistic adults, not just inspirational stories, but people like us talking about their day-to-day life. Basically, we want to give a voice to a variety of autistic people. And our guest today is Amanda Alonso.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Eileen. Hi, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today.
Today, our guest is Amanda Alonso. Amanda is a 36-year-old Latina woman with autism. She's raising her 14-year-old son, who also has autism. She's a psychotherapist who owns her own private practice, Blue Alliance Counseling Center. She's been in the mental health field since she was 18, starting as a mental health specialist in the military, and is now a licensed marriage and family therapist. She wants to spread awareness and advocate for autism awareness and hopes to lead to more acceptance for people like her and her son.
Hey, Amanda. Thank you for joining us today. We were talking before we started recording, and you said you've listened to our podcast before, so you know that we always start by asking our guests how they like to identify. And, you know, we're talking about pronouns, but also I noticed in your bio that you say as autism. And, you know, I think it's the first time we have someone who chooses this terminology. I don't know if I'm correct on that. Don't quote me on that. But I feel like more people use autistic in their bio. So anyway, do you have any preference in how you identify?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So pronouns are she, her. And I do say that I have autism. I prefer that, but I do say I'm autistic too. It just depends on the situation. But since I got diagnosed, since my son's been diagnosed, we say has autism, and he prefers that too. So we're kind of comfortable with that type of thing, with saying it like that. But yeah, so thanks for asking.
And so when were you diagnosed with autism? What was the process like?
Great question. So I was diagnosed in my late 20s. I went to see a psychologist, and for several years, actually, because I'm a huge advocate for mental health. Being in the mental health field, I'm a huge advocate for mental health. And one of the requirements for my master's program was seeing a therapist. And she was able to do the assessments. Like that's what one of her focuses in, but that's not why I went to go see her. But she noticed some things. And, you know, as a couple of years went by, we kind of more diverted into that realm, and that's how the process got started. She noticed it, we did an assessment, but I kept it in my mental health record. So I don't know if people are aware, but you can have it in your mental health record and not put it on your medical record. And it wasn't until my mid-30s, recently actually, that I actually put it in my medical record. So that's what the process has been like. So now it's on my medical record and mental health record, but for quite some time, I just kept it on my mental health record.
And what's the difference? I didn't even know there was one. So do you mind sharing that?
Yeah. So the difference, it varies from state to state, but here in the state of California, the difference is in services that you can receive. So if you just have it on your mental health record, and I wanted to go to, say, the Social Security office and receive some services, or to receive some assistance at work, even in the workplace, government, actually, it's just governmental assistance, Social Security, so that's governmental assistance. But if I wanted assistance, plain and simple, you want assistance like that from maybe the regional center or anything like that, then it would have to be on your medical record. But if you just, you choose not to have assistance because for whatever reason, at the time, I just didn't feel the need to put it on my medical record, you just keep it on your mental health record, and then that's it.
And so that changed throughout the years for you, because at first you didn't have it there and then you got it on there. And I'm also really, that must have been so surprising for you, because you said you went into the assessment and, well, you were seeing your psychologist, but that wasn't why you were seeing her. So that was kind of a surprise. How was it like? Was it weird to learn you have autism?
It was, and then it wasn't. It was. So when my son got diagnosed, my mother, she came with me through his process. And a lot of the questions that she asked, she started thinking back to when I was younger. For me, the biggest thing that went through my mind is, well, I don't think what my son is doing is different, because I resonate with that. Like, it just didn't seem different. That's why I would have never picked up on it. So I was just like, no, but luckily my mom came and so was able to answer a lot of the questions that they had. And then when I started asking like my mom about when I was younger, she started, there's a lot of things that stand out now. Like she thought I was deaf up until like I was 4. She really did believe that I was deaf, but I wasn't. They tested me and everything like that, and I wasn't. I had a lot of difficulties with speech. I was in like speech support language classes and things like that. So there was a lot of signs, but in my culture, whenever we have certain things that are just different, like I was known as the crier, I would have a lot of tantrums. We write it off to wives' tales, old wives' tales. So that in my culture, a lot of the stuff that was different about me at the time was written off as old wives' tales. Like my mom didn't eat the specific food that she craved when I was pregnant, when she was pregnant of me. So that's why I was a crier. It really does roll like that. So I'm a first generation in this country from my father's side. So there really was like that. Like it was a lot of old wives' tales writing it off, like, oh, it's because of this or that. But lo and behold, I would have met the criteria then too, most likely.
That's so crazy. I feel like it's similar in France, not to the same level, but French people tend to write it off. Oh, well, it's bad parenting. Oh, he's being a brat, or it's more of a behavior thing in French people's mind than a disorder. So you both are on the spectrum, you and your son, and I get asked this question a lot, and I'm never sure how to answer. But you said that you were not really aware of your son's differences just because you could relate to him, right? So how does that help you in parenting him? Do you think you understand your son better than a neurotypical parent could?
Wow, another great question. Yeah, we have it like with my husband. He's not on the spectrum and I am. And the way we see certain things that my son would express, even a meltdown, we both express meltdowns. Like I am 36. I still have meltdowns. I mean, I still do. And I'm in the mental health field. I still do. It's never, that part isn't going to change. How we express them is very similar to how my son expresses them. It's aggressive in form, a lot of physical aggression to ourselves more so than to others. So it's just one of those things that I had to walk my husband through because it was really hard for him to grasp. Like I wish it didn't look like that. I wish it wasn't like that. ABA really assisted both my son and me. I know that's a touchy subject, but for me and my son, both of us, it really did help us learn how to cope so it wouldn't be as aggressive. But I had to walk my husband through that because he couldn't grasp his head around like what that was. Certain behaviors, when it comes to just repetitive behaviors, it's really hard for my husband to grasp, like with my son, like, why is it like that? And until I can break it down, because I have more of the, language to utilize to break it down, like, oh, it's, this is just, it feels good when we're doing stuff like that. Or when I watch the same movie for a million times over and over, or eat the same food. So that's how we relate.
And I think it's interesting because, if you don't know that what you're doing is, different, then maybe it's not different to you. Like exactly what you said. You said there was just so much that was, how your son was is on so many ways how you were. So you didn't think there was anything different. I found that, really interesting. Just because we always, if we've never experienced differently, then how do we know? There's no baseline. So what is it like being an autism advocate on social media these days? What do you think we could do better? And how many times you just want to roll your eyes at like everyone, being a like clinician or therapist in a space? I always find some of it must be like watching a movie where like when a lot about a subject, they get it wrong. So like, I'm big into computers and finance. So anytime somebody's like talking about that, I want to roll my eyes, but it's much different when you're an advocate. There's real lives and people at stake.
Yes, that is, I love these questions, by the way. It is so difficult because I feel like, at least for me, the online world is so much different than my offline world. My offline world, until a couple of years ago, in the online world. My offline world, the support, the understanding, and there's not like a lot of aggressive behavior in regards to like what type of language you use. It's more forgiving in that sense, because people truly, genuinely just want to learn. They just want to know, okay, how can I support you? And people are going to make mistakes. People across the board are going to make mistakes. So when I ventured into the online world as an adult a couple of years ago, I felt, you know what? I mean, I've been on the online world for a long time, but in the advocacy sense, I really wanted to find other adults on the spectrum. I mean, I desperately wanted to find other adults on the spectrum because I started becoming more comfortable with letting people know that I'm on the spectrum. So that was about 3 years ago now. Wow. So when I did that, when I started doing that, I was just so like blown away by how like very polarizing the community can be for the adult community, like in the adult world with adults on the spectrum. Like if I were to say that I'm on the spectrum, it was like, you can't say that. I can't say I have autism. And I was like, you have to say you're autistic. And I was like, whoa, wait, what? Because in my world, even in the mental health world, identity is so important and people should be allowed to identify how they choose. That is like one of the things therapy 101. So I was like, wait, we can't tell other people how to choose how to identify. And then language evolves over time, you know, and I can go based off the mental health world because that's what my profession is in. So what mental health used to be, psychology used to be in the 70s is so much different than now because language evolves, but it takes the regular everyday public to catch up to that. And so there's a lot of giving people grace periods and understanding of that. So offline, that was, there was not a lot of jumping on certain language and things like that, and a lot of forgiveness for if people got it wrong, such as now it's like level 1, level 2, level 3 autism. Before it was like high functioning and things like that. Like that's still utilized in the everyday sense. And I'm not going to be very aggressive with somebody if they utilize that. So the online space, I got a lot of pushback when I would say these things. I mean, so much so that I did not want to step into the advocacy world at all. I almost completely stepped out of it. And I did not, I mean, it was just really bad. I was really shaken. I had an uptick in meltdowns because I was just like, what am I doing wrong? Is this really how I must be doing something wrong? I would get a lot of hate in my DMs, so much hate in my DMs. If I were to even say the term ABA, you know, when I was just trying to speak with other parents, not from the parents, from a subgroup of people online. And I was so thrown by that. I got told so many horrible things about my parenting skills. And I could, like, my support group offline really saw that it took a really big toll on me, mental health wise. Like, I can't even, I'm trying to put it into words, but it really was very intense. So,
and you mentioned, you know, your parenting, you know, style or how you were being a parent. Does that have anything to do with certain therapies you might be using and or advocate for?
Yes, it did. Actually, only one, and it was ABA. So, you know, when my son was younger, I would say about 4 years old. So when he first got diagnosed, he got speech therapy, occupational therapy. Those are the first two that they gave us. And then when he turned about 4 years old, he got really extremely aggressive behaviors. He was harming himself. He was really scratching and harming others. It was really bad. Now looking back, I always call those years like the dark years because they were really, I can tell he was really struggling and I was struggling to how can I best support him. It was so painful to see him go through that. Like it was so painful. So then his pediatrician at the regional center, that's what we call the support group around here, offered us ABA. And I was like, yes. And I was in it. I was in the thick of it. And it was difficult in the beginning because one of the things he wanted to do was harm himself. And the meltdowns were intense. But we got some really great ABA therapists. There was a couple of not so great ones, but I advocated, like, you know, I didn't feel comfortable, so can we switch? But for the most part, we got some really great ABA therapists. One was even at my wedding. Like that's how
Oh.
great they were at my wedding when my son was 6 to help him with like the overload and everything like that. And it was just great ABA therapist for like good solid 4 or 5 years. And through that, I learned techniques I didn't have before to help with my own meltdowns. It was the best decision we ever made. Best decision ever made for my son. He manages his meltdowns like a pro. He manages, he found a language to utilize to inform me that, you know, hey, can we go home, or I'm not comfortable with this, or even when he expresses joy. So my son's also level 1. He's very verbal, but he just didn't have the skill set or language at the time to tell me what was going on. But ABA, I feel like helped us. The way I explain it is like unlocking that door to this whole other world for him and for me. It gave me tools that in any other setting, I don't think I would. Wow, I was an adult and I did not get those tools.
It's so nice to hear some nice things about ABA.
Yeah.
Well, you know, well, we know each other a little bit from the online world, and there is so much hate about ABA, and same for us. It's helped in so many ways. You know, people say that it's trying to make an autistic person normal, and all I see are people who are teaching Charlie how to communicate, you know, with sign language, with his iPad. That's another thing that people say about ABA, that they only teach verbal communication. No, if anything, like it's the opposite for us. Like they're trying everything that is not verbal, because Charlie has apraxia on top of autism, so it's really hard to, you know, for him to get the words out. So we're trying sign language now that his fine motor skills are getting there. But anyway, you said something that I feel like is so important and that people really need to understand, is that you said you had some therapists, a few, I forget what you said, but that you didn't like, and you voice your concern and you got a new therapist, right? And that's it. If there's something that you don't like that the therapists are doing, well, you say something. You know, they don't have only one therapist. If you don't vibe with one, you say something, and that's it. You know, it's same as a teacher or a babysitter. Like people treat ABA as such like that evil thing, when it's the same as everything else in life. You know, you can speak up, and the profession itself is not abusive at all. Of course, you're going to have some bad therapists, but that's the same in all the fields. And to me, it blows my mind that people don't get that. You know, they make it about the field, about the therapy itself. And that's not right.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. You know, what I said earlier about the mental health field, psychotherapy, psychology, where we were about when it first came out with Freud in the beginning of my profession. This is the profession like I'm in, that I've been in since I was 18. It was not where it is now and where it was when it began. Again, evolved over time. It was very rude to women. It was not the best in the beginning, but they did the best they could with what they had, right? But now it's evolved. It's more inclusive. We have different modalities to choose from. The same thing with any therapeutic field, where how it started and the reasons for starting it and where it is now. It's an evolved evolution over time. So in my field, if you're not going to gel with every therapist. It's impossible. And nor will I gel with every client. It's impossible to expect that. Realistic expectations. So in those cases, you just find another therapist, second opinions, etc. Same thing with doctors. Every field we would do the same thing in. So I never understood, why would ABA be any different? My son was never supposed to be able to like fit with every single therapist that came across our, doorstep. There was a couple that for the majority of the time, it worked out really well. And then there was 2 specific ones where it just didn't, I just didn't feel comfortable. Like me as the parent, I was just like, I don't know, like it just wasn't the best comfort level. And then the second one was because there was a technique that was implemented. And again, because I had such a good BCBA before, I just didn't care for this BCBA. So I was like, you know what? I think it'd be best for a better fit with somebody else. And then that's it. And then we moved on and he continued on with therapy. So just like with any other field, that's the part that where I get stopped up. Like I get stopped up whenever I hear that, is I'm like, every field is similar in that instance where it evolved from when it first came out, as it should. The more info you know, the more peer-reviewed science that backs it up, You want to evolve, change techniques, improve upon techniques. Do it in my field all the time, every year. So why wouldn't it be the same for ABA?
Now, but for parents who may not have as much background as you, not just as a mental health clinician, therapist, but also as an autistic person yourself, sorry, a person with autism yourself, then, what tips would you give parents on what to look for in a good ABA therapist and what to not look for? Because I think that's really important.
I'll start with the what to not look, or well, at least for me, what didn't gel so well. One thing was when you would say that, okay, if you reach this milestone, then, we get to do a preferred task. And then she would keep moving the goalpost. Like, oh, no, now you got to do this before. And it was just frustrating. It was frustrating for me too. And I was like, wait, don't do that. So if they keep moving the goalpost and the goals aren't actually set down, like this is what we're working on today, this is what it's going to look like. If they can explain what it is that they're doing and, again, create that rapport with you and with the child, and it'll take time. But if they can't explain it, then it might not be the best fit. Maybe whether they need more training or something like that. Or again, it's just if the way they're explaining it, just you just don't feel comfortable at the end of the day, then it may not be the best fit.
So the issue, from what I'm gathering, is not so much of a reward itself, but just a reward like a carrot in front of a horse, and the horse keeps running after it and never gets the carrot. But getting a reward for doing something, is the reason that pretty much everyone does anything, right? So what you're saying is, actually give the reward and don't just, keep holding that in front of them without giving it to them. Have obtainable goals with a clear plan in mind.
Yeah, I love that word that you used, obtainable goals, realistic goals. Because the goal is not and should never be to set off a meltdown. That is not the overall goal right there. So yeah, obtainable and realistic goals. Also, I do believe that something that's very interesting, I'm doing a little sidebar of what you just said, is that, yes, human behavior, we work towards things because then we get that. We do it all the time. We have 40-hour job weeks. I mean, mine is quite different because I get to structure my world the way I want. But even me, even me, we have a set end and then we look forward to the weekend. So we have a certain amount of hours we work, then we look forward to like a certain day. We look forward to the weekend. It's human behavior. Typical children go through it all the time in school. What I think is the unique part about ABA, and also why it's so effective, is because it's specially fine-tuned for those on the spectrum or those that are struggling with certain behaviors due to a diagnosis. That's why it's fine-tuned. I have a stepdaughter with Down syndrome, and she also received ABA, and it helped her immensely with her behaviors and her being able to communicate. So it fine-tunes for those who are different because they're not going to be able to do the behavioral or fine-tune their behaviors in a typical setting. So I think that's great. If you can get it more applied to people who are different and not typical, that's a good start. At least, again, in my opinion.
No, I'm with you there. There are, so many things about ABA that are used in our everyday life, whether we're autistic or not. That's the thing that people don't understand. Like even like the most neurotypical person in the world, like is still using like ABA techniques, whether they realize it or not. That's how life works. And I don't understand why people are so against rewards. We use them. Just, like smiling at someone, like in itself is a reward, when they say something. Like it's every little behavior is like ABA in a way, Anyway, I could go on and on about ABA for a long time.
Really? Are you sure, Eileen? I didn't think you could. So
yeah, but it's nice to have someone who actually agrees with me for once. So last time it didn't go so well. Anyway, how do you deal with the the hate online? I know you mentioned earlier that at some point you didn't even think you could go through with like being an autism advocate because of it. So what changed?
Yeah. Well, as I put to my friends and family was, I got immense support from them. I set very firm boundaries, very firm boundaries. And that gave me the ability to find my voice again. It really was a hard time. When I first started getting that influx of hate, I was shocked. And the reason how it started was, so every year I do the autism walk here in my county here in California, Southern California. It's huge. 500,000 people at one point were going, especially before the pandemic. So it makes me sad that last year we couldn't do it. Well, I did it online.
500,000?
And that's what, yeah. And Jesus. So it's with Autism Speaks. And so what happened is they changed it to online because of the pandemic. And that was the first time I ever got hate because I used this hashtag Autism Speaks. And I got a few DMs of saying really horrible things. And I just couldn't believe it. And then that's when all trickled down from there. And so I was just like so shocked. But then, as you asked, I set really firm boundaries. You don't get to talk to me like that, online or offline. Nobody would ever do that offline. No one has ever in my life talked to me like that offline. And you don't get to do it online either. Point blank, period. You don't get to do that. You don't get the anonymity of saying crappy things like that to someone because of the online spectrum and expecting people not to, like I post. If someone sends me that, I will post on my stories, like, just as a reminder to others, like, this hate exists and it shouldn't. It shouldn't exist. And if because I set those boundaries, you feel shame for sending somebody something like that, I'm like, you should feel shame. You should not do that. So that's how I found my voice again, is I set really firm boundaries. Sometimes I'll get tagged in certain people's posts and I have a copy paste message. And then sometimes I'll put like, depending on what they tag me in, and I'll just say straight out, I don't know you. I don't know this person that you tagged me in their post. We can agree to disagree. You have a great day. Please don't ever tag me in another post again. And that's it. And then they'll try to do it back and forth. And I'm like, I said what I had to say. I don't agree with you. And you don't have to agree with me. But you don't get to do that to me. No one gets to harass me, just free will. Nope.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like, we can disagree with each other. What's not okay is like the dog piling. It's then that, okay, this person doesn't agree with me, so I'm going to tell all of my friends to go attack this person, like that's not advocacy. And it's become such a big issue in the community that so many people are at the place where you were. They don't want to be an autism advocate. Like, I cannot tell you how many messages I get from parents and autistic people who are like, I want to do this, but I am so scared of the hate. Like, even like tiny little accounts with like 100 followers get attacked if they use the wrong hashtag. This is terrible. I have a friend who's an adult in ABA, and she actually wrote a post for Autism Speaks, but she was scared. So she did it anonymously. That's where people are at. You have to say you're in favor of ABA, like hiding your name. You can't even use your name to say you're in favor of ABA. Like, I don't blame them because the hate is so bad, but I don't know. I feel like that should be a wake-up call for a lot of people. Like, people are being silenced, are being bullied into silence, basically, is what's going on right now. And if we want to, like, we're not saying ABA is perfect. Like, listen to us. Like, we just talked about, things that are not good in ABA. Like, there is a middle ground to be found. And I know, like, autistic people, there is a lot of black and white thinking. But we can find a middle ground. ABA is not going anywhere. So let's reform ABA instead of like just trying to make it disappear, because it's not going to disappear. So we might as well work together. But there are a lot of people who don't want to do that. I feel like they get pleasure out of just, that, I don't know if it's a social justice thing, but it's almost like it's their whole online personality.
Yeah, for me, when I see it, it's more of like that creating discourse, just for discourse's sake and not really like purposeful and intentional. Yeah. I've been in a lot of social justice circles. I mean, I feel very passionate about a lot of different like human rights violations that like And I've seen hate for a lot. Like I've seen people spew hate or have really large disagreements. But the hate that I received and autism advocacy is on another level. To a person who is also, who is autistic, who is diagnosed autistic, or however people want to be in the realm. But that is so incredibly, it's just, I got taken aback. And I really had to do a lot of inner thinking and a lot of true soul searching. I know it sounds cheesy, but it really did, because there's so many other areas of my life where I don't mind being on the forefront. I really don't. And this one, it was so intense that I was just like, I wanted that anonymity. And then I realized, because I saw so many other people like you did, Eileen, just not want to, they were so worried about saying the wrong thing. I was like, I'm in such a privileged position. I'm in the mental health field. From here on out, for the rest of my life, I'm going to do research on autism, on whatever I get to choose. Like, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm doing research. My dissertation is on women on the spectrum, women with autism in relational settings. So that's what I'm working on right now. But I will be doing that for the rest of my life. So if I have this privilege, why would I allow others to silence me? And then why would I silence myself? So that is one of the main, where I did nope, I can't let someone who has no idea who I am, knows nothing about me, silence me, because they're already silencing so many people that need support, that truly want and need support. And so, yeah, I just couldn't do that.
I'm glad you didn't.
And something that I always think about is that the people who are not arguing back are the nice ones, the ones who have jobs. I mean, I actually don't know the statistics, but how many, BCBAs there are, in the country, and how big a business ABA is. And, I always find it interesting how, they're not attacking the BCBA providers. They're not boycotting ABA. They're not trying to change ABA laws. They're trying to get the one parent to, do something else for their child, right? Or really, sometimes, trying to call the person's job and threaten them, or boycott the product, or cancel. And one thing that I fear is that there won't be enough good people like you who truly care. And if somebody was looking to get into this field and they would say, well, it seems like the online community doesn't really want this. So, basically, I feel like we're probably creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Where I think there will be less good ABA therapists, because we're there's still going to be ABA therapists. So then there will be people who don't actually care. And I'm just concerned about the long-term harm of that. I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever. If it did, please tell me your thoughts. And if it didn't, then, sorry.
Yeah. No, it made sense. And, in the online space, I've been able to find a few ABA therapists who they themselves are also autistic. And they are doing the work from the inside out. You want to change a system, then it takes work. It does. It takes people inside the system, outside the system, etc. And again, I stress this, in any field. This is not ABA is just not this special, its own little world as what it's made out to be. No, this is in any field, in any system that's created. People change it from the inside, people change it from the outside. There's multiple roles. So just attacking parents who are already worried, scared, they were just looking for a safe haven. I was there at one point. I wasn't diagnosed until my late 20s. And when my son first got diagnosed, I was about 26. And all I wanted was support. I was just looking, what do I do? So I would ask anybody, just finding information, gobbling up information. What's the next step now to help best support my child? And other parents are looking for the same thing. More often than not, that's all they're looking for. And so someone to attack them and scream at them and tell them they're doing something wrong, that's not very productive. And
I
that's
think
not
as
gonna
you
do
as a therapist would not change many people's behavior if that was your strategy. I mean, it might work for like, Dave, might work for, it's not Dave Ramsay. Oh my God. We're going to have to cut this because I'm an idiot. Who's the kitchen guy who screams at people? Hell's Kitchen.
Gordon Ramsay.
Why am I having such a brain fart right now? Oh my God.
Gordon Ramsay. I just
Okay,
told
so we're
you.
going to cut this. Okay. But yeah, I mean, as a therapist, that doesn't work. Gordon Ramsay does not, work in therapy, right? Screaming at people, that the beef Wellington, still no idea what beef Wellington is, although they make it a
so
lot.
good. Scallops too. Oh my God.
Scallops are great. Well, in Connecticut, we have lots of scallop boats. We're like, the scallops are, yeah.
By the sea.
Yeah.
Ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it would not work in my profession at all. In fact, we have a whole ethical board that you'd probably, get a lot of marks on your license if you ever were screaming at your clients.
I'm sure it's tempting someone sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, it's just one of those things where if you want to create change, like I said, it takes work and empathy for others who are in a certain plight for whatever advocacy you want to do. And if you're lacking that or / attacking on a constant basis, those that are either looking for help or trying to help, what improvements are ever going to be made from that? None. You're going to, in fact, at least in the online space, sticking with the online space, one of the most polarizing things that I ever saw is a bubble gets created where you're going to hear a lot of voices that agree with you. And then you're going to think that that's everybody. And that boggles my mind because I know, again, so many people in the offline space who don't do anything on the online space. As much as we think everybody's online, they're not. They're not looking at the same content that you may be doing. So if you have 20,000 people who are all saying yes to something, that doesn't mean it's everyone in the autistic community.
No.
It doesn't mean everyone agrees with this because I had 200 people say yes on my poll or something like that. And that's the most frustrating, like mind-boggling thing. I'm like, no, or the majority. What I always heard was, at least told to me, like the majority say they want to say they're autistic. And I was like, well, I don't know. That's great if you do, but no one ever gets to tell me how to identify. No one ever gets to tell my son how to identify. Or again, offline space, I go to support groups for adults with autism. No one should ever tell any of them how to identify.
Yep.
So I don't think it's the majority then.
Oh, it's only the majority because often what they mean is that they did a survey in their groups that ban anybody they disagree with. And within this group, their echo chamber, they're the majority. But if anyone doesn't like ABA, they're going to be banned from the group. So of course, no one's going to answer that they're like in favor of ABA. If people identify as person with autism, they're going to be banned from the group. So of course, if you do a survey, everyone's going to answer autistic. I mean, it's like the most, it's so biased. What's the word?
Batshit crazy comes to mind. I thought that's what you were going for, but I guess bias works too. So
it's insane. Yeah.
So one of the best things that was told to me, and this was another thing that just really helped me like bring balance to this online world and my real world, I like to call it, or the offline world, was when I got asked about like going to the walks. I do it every year. Me, my whole family, we make a whole thing about it. We go to the and it's sponsored by Autism Speaks. They actually created the walk. It's huge. It's here in Pasadena. And then it's a big thing. And they asked me and they go, yeah, because I was like, oh my gosh, like my shirt has a little puzzle piece. Again, symbols, it's so polarizing. And I didn't know that 3 years ago. But then they told me, okay, how many people are at that walk? And I said, it gets to hundreds of thousands. At one point, it was 500,000 people were at that walk. We have tens of thousands of people yearly that go. They said, all those people, those are the people. They still like, they're there. You guys all in this together. They're supporting, whether it be the same organization or utilizing the same thing, XYZ, whatever it is. And I was like, that's so true. And that's when I took a step back and I looked around me and I said, you know what? This is my community offline. And it's not like online.
No, it's not.
And that's what matters. I can scream online all I want, but if I'm not creating the change in my community, if I'm not doing the actual work in my community, what good is it going to do? What good is it going to do if I have hundreds of thousands of followers, but I don't ever step outside and actually do, as a mental health specialist, but as a psychotherapist in my community, that the daily change that needs to be done, the daily support. So it's about balance. That's how I balance myself in all of this.
And so you're a licensed marriage and family therapist. So in your practice, do you have a specialty? Do you work as a marriage counselor, or are there, what does your day job look like?
So we, as therapists, some of us have focuses and some don't. And my focus is trauma. So I have a few focuses, but my main focus that I've always worked on in my field, or at least in my practice, is trauma, veterans, support for veterans, support for those who are neurodiverse and their families. And those are like the top three that is my focus, my specialty skill set. We call it our focus as opposed to like my specialty, but yeah, that's my focus. So trauma, since in the military, like that's been my focus, and I'm very comfortable in that realm, and not many people are. It's a very difficult field to focus in. It's a very difficult specialty to focus in my field. But
why is it? What makes it difficult?
The burnout rate. If you work with, you hear a lot of traumatic stories, and us as clinicians, we carry that. We help carry the load, share the load with our clients. And so the burnout rate is very high. You're privy to a lot of quite unfortunate stories. But I just, oh gosh, it's been 10 years now. I can't believe it. Almost 10 years. Whew, I know, 20. Oh my goodness. Because I joined the military when I was 17. So I'm like, wow, of just being in the thick of when it comes to trauma focused care. And it's just something that I found out that I'm really good at. And I love it. I love the work I do. I truly do. I love the work I do.
That's the most important thing. What do they say? If you love your job, you won't ever have to work a day in your life.
And I really do love my job.
And you're helping people. I mean, it's really perfect. All right. You know the podcast. So you know what quickfire questions are?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Okay. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
That if others have done it before, then that means you can do it too.
What do you like to do to relax?
Listen to music.
What's your favorite artist or band? Okay, you can say 3. I know it's hard.
Okay, my favorite artist or band right now. I love the Beatles.
Oh, me too.
I really do. I love Vicente Fernandez. He's huge in my culture. Oh, I love him so much, his music. And oh my gosh, it's just like so hard right now. Oh, Nicki Minaj. I adore Nicki Minaj. Just love it.
I can
so
tell.
It's very random people, but I love them all.
What's your favorite food?
Pizza, lasagna, hands down lasagna, and then pizza.
What's your favorite movie or TV show?
Oh my goodness. The movie that comes to mind is Sabrina, the one with Harrison Ford.
Okay, best branch of the military?
Army. Okay, because I was in it, but that's Air Force. Air Force is the best branch. If anybody ever asks me, I want to join the military, I always tell them, go to the Air Force.
Why? What's the reason?
Because they treat their soldiers so well, and they have all the top quality stuff. And then everything else trickles down to the rest of us.
Why do you think that is? I never knew that. That's so interesting.
I don't know. People that score really high on, I think it's like ASVAB test. I believe that's what it's called. It's been a while now. But they get scooped up into there. Just if I could do it over again, I probably would have joined the Air Force. I wanted to join the Marines. I really did. But then they told me I had to cut my hair. And I always had long hair, and I was like, because you have to cut it short up to here as a female Marine. And I was like, no, that's the only reason I didn't join the Marines. So then I went to the Army.
Oh, I could.
And if I would have known, I would have did the Air Force.
That's awesome. I'm not familiar at all with that world, and it's nice to hear from you, especially as a female, as a woman. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great speaking with you, and I hope people listen and hear, another perspective from an autistic adult in favor of ABA and all the important things we talked about. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I hope so too. I know hopefully a couple of people are listening out there, but it's
just a couple.
Yeah, a few people, hopefully more than a couple.
Oh yeah, where can they find you online, by the way? Do you want to on social media? If you want them to find you, that's fine.
So my Instagram is Army Brat Chick. Hopefully by next year when I graduate, it'll be different. And then Blue Alliance is my company's Instagram, on my business's private practice Instagram. But I'm mostly on Instagram. That's why I keep talking about Instagram. I have Facebook very rarely.
Too much.
Yeah, it's intense.
I think you're in our group, Adulting on the Spectrum, right?
Yes, I am.
Nice.
Yeah, I love to see, the boundaries that the group put on from the get-go. And I was like, okay. And I realized there are safe spaces out there. They were needed, and I'm glad they were created. But there are good inclusive groups out there for parents and for those on the spectrum, and I think that's just a step in the right direction.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, it was so great speaking with you. Right, Andrew? You enjoyed that?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was great. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, you guys. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm in it.